Mortal Kombat is a franchise with mass appeal, so much so that it is hard to truly comprehend its size when next to Street Fighter and Tekken. The gaming audience has likely heard of all three across the over 20 years of history they all have. But among non-gamers, at least up until recently, if you ask them to name an iconic fighting game franchise, most of them would pick Mortal Kombat. It is from this point of view that we want to tackle today's DashFight video topic. Hardcore fighting game fans understand a big portion of the experience in the space comes from fighting other players, be it friends, locals, or online across the world, or, well, more realistically, your own region on what is hopefully not a Wi-Fi connection. But there is a huge number of players for whom the single-player experience is why they will try out a fighting game. So when we inevitably encounter someone who asks us, or you, for a game recommendation in the fighting game space, which one do you choose? For the longest time, it was easy to give Mortal Kombat a glowing recommendation. Its story was unlike any other in the genre when it came to quality, polish, and above all else, approachability, at least relative to other games. The Crypt and Towers of Mortal Kombat 11 made for easy content to grind out in a couple of hours and gave players a sense of progression throughout, with challenges appearing frequently enough that it could realistically be someone's daily pickup game after a long day at work. In today's video, we want to explore what could, in the coming years, turn out to be Mortal Kombat 1's best single-player feature, or a high-maintenance mode that is slowly taken out due to its lack of polish. Before we do, however, we want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and enable notifications so you don't miss out on any of our new videos, including player guides, reviews, and more. Also, if you want to complete invasions every season, check out DashFight.com for up-to-date guides on all messes each season. On paper, Mortal Kombat 1's Invasion Mode is an interesting idea to deliver single-player content for a game that will likely be supported for a very long time. Previously, in Mortal Kombat 11, the single-player content was divided into two different modes. On the one, you had Towers, which changed weekly, monthly, daily, and even hourly. At the same time, there was a one-time single-player mode called the Crypt. Let's start there. The Crypt was a packed mode with multiple encounters, chests, puzzles, and secrets spread across multiple areas, all tied together with some sort of functional cinematics. The only major downfall of the mode was its novelty, as completing it once was all you can do, although it was hard to do absolutely everything in the Crypt. The time-limited nature of the Crypt obviously played a part in how long and grindy it felt, but as long as you didn't try to rush through it all in one sitting, it did give some form of long-term single-player gameplay. Conversely, the Towers were the cyclical content of Mortal Kombat 11. Once done with the Crypt and the story, the only regular single-player content to go through was the Towers. The whole mode had some variations, and NRS managed to sneak a couple of secrets into it as well, but mechanically, they were more or less the same every time. In comes Invasions from Mortal Kombat 1, which replaces both the Towers and the Crypt as the key single-player content for the game. It is also tied to the seasonal cycle in the game, which replaces the shop with new items, and introduces new cosmetics into the game every month or so. Invasions is an interesting take on the idea, taking away the uniqueness of the Crypt and deconstructing Towers, well, not all Towers, to spread out fights across a playable area that touches on the main story areas, like the Tarkatan Colony, Sundo, the Living Forest, and others. The mode uses a lot of tabletop elements to try to make it work. Elemental resistance and damages, the node system, towers within mesas, the list goes on. Even as an idea, it already loses some of the things that made the Crypt an interesting experience, like the cutscenes and handcrafted areas. Invasion's messes are still beautifully made, and there is great attention to detail in many of them, but the node system and its restrictions make for a visually gamey experience. It's hard to immerse yourself in the environment when every node path glows green, judging you for not backtracking to Bob's Forge 10 nodes back. The mode feels very mechanical, a checklist of achievements you must complete with very little player expression. In fact, after you start to level past the level of the fights in the mesa itself, fights become so simple that you might be legitimately taken back by the fact you suddenly stumbled upon a mini-boss node, and now you have to defeat an opponent twice. Hell, it might even take you more than 10 seconds to finish the fight. This brings us to the first major issue with Invasions. Determining difficulty is really hard. To be fair, this is not an easy task. Make Invasion opponents too powerful and players will lose interest in the mode. If it's too easy, well, you have Invasion Season 2. It also doesn't help that many of the ways NRS could tweak things to adjust difficulty rarely work as designed. Modifiers, for instance. Let us know in the comments if you ever needed to account for a modifier ahead of a fight. Did you know that we launched the DashFight Awards 2023 voting on our website? There, you can vote on 13 categories like Player of the Year, Most Anticipated Upcoming Game, and Ultimate Fighting Game of the Year. Check the link in the description and go vote to make sure your voice is heard. Invasions 1 taught us, and NRS, that once again, super armor is not a fun mechanic. So, for Season 2, it was moved to just boss encounters. But that also means many of the talismans and relics that deal with super armor are now virtually useless. Since we are already here, relics and talismans fail to live up to what a new player might expect. Bob's Forge might be a fun idea, but outside of recharging talismans or maybe trying to upgrade one of them, virtually every legendary talisman past level 20 will be better than a handcrafted one that you spent mountains of time grinding for. Relics are also rarely valuable, outside of the XP ones, which are just miles ahead of the competition regarding who gets picked for every fighter. It's all very flowchart Mortal Kombat. You make choices based not on what is most fun, but what allows you to ignore the most annoying parts of the mode, which feels like it's not the point of single-player seasonal content. Speaking of seasonal content, did you know we also have a Patreon? You can help support us and our team by joining, allowing us to make more videos, guides, and reviews here on YouTube, and expand our content on DashFight.com. And you get some exclusive behind the scenes and extra digital goodies to boot. Finally, let's talk about those seasons because it is so unfortunate that potentially great storylines are compacted into 2 cinematics, one at the start and another at the end, with nothing in between. Okay, sorry, not nothing. Sometimes Liu Kang will interrupt you before a boss fight to give you less than 50 words on the upcoming encounter. The wild part is that there are NPCs in the messes. People that could have a speech bubble during your travels, comment on your progress, and give you hints about secrets. Bosses never have any final words. They don't have any dialogue at all, in fact, and the most cinematic invasions get is a drone shot of each mesa when you enter it for the first time. Oddly enough, all tower endings for characters can be watched however many times you want, but invasion cinematics, be it the opening and closing cinematics or the mesa's overviews, are nowhere to be found. There are players who will have started invasions, gotten bored, then returned weeks later, having forgotten everything about a season, and no way of seeing those cinematics again unless they look them up online. Can invasions improve? The short answer is yes, they can. The long answer requires that we put a lot of trust into NRS to roll out incremental improvements to the system. None of us are game developers except, of course, the few people in the comments who can come up with a best-selling fighting game capable of winning the Game of the Year in their spare time if they wanted, but we digress. Infinite content might work for the likes of Fortnite, but it comes at the expense of a monstrous number of developer hours poured into animations, art, and testing. At the current rate, NRS aims to release a new invasion season with more than 20 characters receiving at least 2 unique cosmetics and their associated palettes. You are looking at potentially hundreds of models making their way into the game every year, not to mention the added work of new DLC characters and cameos. In some ways, we do have reason to trust NRS. The changes from the first to the second invasion season prove they are listening to the community and adjusting many of its features to make for a nicer experience. Yet, that also points to invasions being a very much undercooked soup of ideas that the team keeps adding veggies to and adjusting the seasoning as they go. Maybe we'll end up with a brilliant main course, but it's hard to say that right now. There are also towers in the Gateway Portal Mesa, which very much resembles that of MK11. As they remain mostly unchanged, they are also quite a bit of fun. However, they can still grind you down eventually, especially after unlocking most skins and palettes via fights or just the seasonal shop. Ultimately, the answer might not be just improving what's there, but replacing it. Maybe the NRS team could lean into a genre that has found great success, roguelike, node-based games, reshaping mesas to be the classic multiple choice path, with relics providing unique bonuses, bosses actually having weight to them, and turning the mesa completion experience from a game of whack-a-mole to a more rapid play session. Would we recommend Mortal Kombat to our friends who like most single-player content? Maybe. It's hard to give it anything above a 5 out of 10 today, but there is also an interesting take on larger single-player content that goes beyond just creating an open world, though there is nothing wrong with that. Ken is behind me, isn't he? Anyway, out to all you in the comments, what do you think is missing from Invasions? Do you think it has some potential in the future, or will it just become a dead mode that NRS drags along for years? Okay, yes, you won Fighting Game of the Year, and that is all good, but that does not mean you can just constantly show up in our Mortal Kombat videos. If you enjoyed today's video, please drop us a like, and we thank you so much for your support. If you didn't like today's video, let us know in the comments why. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.